You're watching News at Prime. Let's bring you this now. The presidency says all costs associated with the national dialogue are being handled in line with the Public Finance Management Act. It follows criticism about the costs of the event, which takes place on Friday and Saturday. Deputy President Paul Mashatile is leading a group of government departments which are working together to keep the costs under control. The presidency says the University of South Africa has stepped in to host the event and is providing many services for free. Funding will also come from existing government budgets as well as donations, it says.
All procurement and management of public funds will adhere to the PFMA and applicable Treasury regulations. All funds will be accounted for through the normal public finance mechanisms. Donations have been received for the National Dialogue digital platform. Some goods and services such as the venue, screens for public viewing, and rail and road transport are being provided at no cost.
All right. Now, a number of foundations have announced their withdrawal from the dialogue. Let's speak now to the Steve Biko Foundation's Nkosinathi Biko, who joins us tonight. Mr. Biko, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. Let's understand your withdrawal as a foundation from the National Convention. What is the reasoning behind that?
All right. It does go back a little bit, the explanation. Sometime in August last year, the foundations, having made a call to initiate the national dialogue, approached the presidency, in particular the president as the head of state, to see if there was a way, given the GNU's commitment and his own pronouncements on the national dialogue, that we could find a working formula between civil society, government, his office. And he did indeed send emissaries, about 5 of them. And we've been working very well over the past couple of months to bed down the principles.
Yeah.
The idea here was that to manage this process as a process that is underpinned by citizens and independent of government, it would be located within NEDLEC, and that we would create capacity there for a secretariat as well as logistical arrangements within NEDLEC. We have been operating on the basis of an understanding that the budgeting process is indeed underway and there are commitments, and we've taken forward the process. But there's a critical date. Come the 22nd of July, we were then dealing with a deadline that is impossible to navigate in terms of the PFMA. And that deadline relates to procuring services, especially those of around $1 million plus. And we have to do certain processes, advertise and adjudicate and so forth. All of that, of course, is supposed to happen within NEDLEC.
Yeah.
And then we asked the question, how are we going to navigate around this? Because we now have reached a critical point on our trajectory. And the reality is that that capacity was not created within NEDLEC. There's a small secretariat, but no logistical function could have happened within NEDLEC, because only about 2 days ago did I receive confirmation that there is some funding that has gone the way of NEDLEC. So it's been totally without that. So this then led to a situation where there are all these other activities happening through other elements of government. And the same question applies because of the PFMA principle. How are they getting around those matters? And it's really things like lack of assurance on how those things are happening. And we know that you can't get past this by way of emergency procurement because it would be self-created. That's what the government's response was to the Labour Party matter in July. So we got to a point then where we were faced with this one, without that capacity, can we have the event that we want on the 15th? And I think across all parties, that is impossible. And this is why there is now talk about an altered version of the event, right? The responses that you are getting speak to some of the quantitative issues that have been now procured by other elements of government. We're quite not clear how that has gone about. But there are huge qualitative issues that should have been happening within NADLEC that haven't happened.
Yeah.
So the 15th will be a compromised event if it does happen, but it doesn't seem that it would also be an event that is lawful. That's really the fundamental thing. Do we have a path to a lawful event? And the parties have really been at variance around that.
That's a huge statement you've just made, that the event on the 15th and 16th of this month will be not only compromised, but illegal. On what basis would you say that? If you could just help us understand that, so that we do not, so that we don't get comebacks to say you were quoted out of context.
Yeah. So earlier on, I was listening to the interview, and Vince was obviously speaking to this very issue of legality. The other side is, again, is this question: how are we able to get past these deadlines? Right? So let me give a specific example. In the application brought by the Labour Party, right, they argued that they wanted their matter heard on an urgent basis. And the responding affidavit by government on behalf of all of those who were cited was that it should be struck off because there is no urgency, right? And any agency would be self-created because this matter was talked about going back to July or thereabout 2024. Now, if you deny the existence of agency and you avow that it is self-created, we can never have any processes that relate to this that are based on agency or procurements related to agency. And this is why we said one of the ways to deal with this is to push the timeline out. And the president can control the narrative because it is real. We know that budgets for this year were late, right? This is why, for instance, for this, I only have a letter confirming some funding into NADLEC only really 2 days ago, right? We understand that. To push it back then allows for all of those things, the budgeting process to happen and be concluded, the planning to happen, and we would utilize the time to firm up the engagement and prepare the communities. We couldn't reach an agreement on that. And so we decided that what would then happen, because we are custodians of the process and cannot vouch for some of these things, we would then step down from the preparatory task team and allow the members of the team who are confident to take us forward to the 15th. Okay. I must emphasize, we believe in the dialogue. We are committed to a national dialogue, but we are only able to participate in this period leading to a convention if we have those assurances.
Yeah.
They are easier, I guess, to those in government than to those who are looking in and asking questions without the necessary affirmation.
Okay, so two issues seem to be coming out strongly, at least from my understanding. The budgeting process, but also, second of all, who controls this dialogue process? And let me start with the one that comes out stronger, which is the budgeting. The Sunday Times, I don't know if you've had a look at it today, they are saying that President Ramaphosa refused your initial, when I say your, the foundation's initial budget request for an amount of 853 million rand, only offering 452 million rand. Now, when I listen to your description around this, there is talk of a self-created emergency. Now, here is a statement that seems to suggest that the foundations asked for this exorbitant figure, and the president said, no, I can only afford half of that. But your language seems to suggest otherwise, almost intimating that government would fudge or fumble these matters to a point where a self-created emergency is now the order of the day in order to release funds. Am I hearing you correctly?
Probably, let's go right to that issue. In fact, it's very important that we did not issue any statements until the end of the day, right? So I read that article, and it's clear that a narrative is being created that there is fight over quantum and all of that kind of stuff, right? That is in the hands of a subcommittee which has got two people, one from government, three people, one from government, one from NEDLEC, and one from the foundations, to make a determination of the role of government. We had given models of what they could look at to help them make a decision, depending on the level of interaction with the public and participation that we wanted. Now I see figures I have no knowledge of being flouted about, and a story being created as if there is a fight, and an affirmation that there is a budget now settled at for whatever it is that is in the Sunday Times. Here, that was the story in the morning in the Sunday Times. I am in receipt of a statement that seems to emanate from the presidency of the 10th of August, and yet what it is saying about the budget. The total budget for the National Dialogue will be developed as the structure and form of the community dialogues are finalized by the convention, and will depend on in-kind contributions, donations, and other resources. So in the morning, there's a source saying there's a budget settled and whatever figure they're touting.
Yeah.
In the evening, there's a thing that says budgeting has yet to be done. I'm not clear as to what the actual story is on that. The only thing I can confirm to you that I know is on the table as the capacity we talked about to be created within NEDLEC is a confirmation dated the 8th of August, which is that NEDLEC has finally received some of the resources required to give us. So all of this leaves you, if you are in a planning position and you have to make a decision, are we ready here? I mean, if there are two versions of whether or not there's a budget coming out seemingly from the same sources, and you have an event in 8 days, it seems to me that we just needed to step back and allow, and that was the approach to the president. Mr. President, please consider this, that there are concerns around where we are on the timeline, that we will trip ourselves on legalities. Let's complete whatever budgeting process needs to happen. We understand the issues, and let's just do this correctly, ensure that it's on the right side. Remember, it's a process invoked in the name of the people, and it's intended to cure some of these ills in our society. And so we can't get it wrong. Right. So this narrative that I saw this morning, including this other allegation of a power struggle, is a creation that is even negated by a statement coming out of the presidency's office, at least insofar as it speaks to the question of a settled budget.
Let's deal with the final element. As I said, there were two. The final one being one that you actually allude to now, the degree of involvement of government versus this process being a civil society-led initiative. Someone has got to lead at the end of the day. Is government wrong by putting itself forward as directing how this should go? In the foundation's thinking of this, who was going to actually lead this? Would it be the foundations themselves? This is, by the way, the brainchild of the Mbeki Foundation, who then invites other foundations such as yourselves.
So government is not wrong in participating. And remember, government is, whether we as citizens voted in or not, is our collective government, and the principle was that they had a role. So here were the steps that we agreed to. The preparatory committee of the foundations agreed that there would be emissaries of the president coming in, and we formed what is the preparatory trust team together with other stakeholders. There was going to be, in terms of government participation, an IMC, Interministerial Committee. This would help us deal with the issues as they arise. You can't be talking about the future when people say we have no water. They were also going to organize government to take their seat at the table of the dialogue, not as leadership of the dialogue. In the structures itself, there has developed pressure on the structures such that there is disproportionate representation. Those are things that the PTT works through, and those are things that, of course, we have tried to push back on, the disproportionate representation of government. So government's role was always important, but insofar as the support for this, the anchor structure was NEDLAC. And there was also thinking around this issue of NEDLAC, because there are parties looking in on it, labor, business, oversight on how it manages, but it's also delinked. Because if it's not delinked sufficiently from government, the difficulty is that when we go to community dialogue, people are going to be raising very difficult issues. Some of them about government, some of them, of course, about our own communities. So the process must be a process that is able to take seriously those contributions without influencing them or filtering them and so forth. And that's why the principle of ensuring that there is sufficient distance from government control, and the president uses the words himself in a different statement about this matter, where he says the role of government is important, but this is a citizen-led process. Probably this ought to have been resolved by the 5th. We had a way forward that we had agreed through a facilitator. We were going to go with a proposal to the president that is built on the notion of a postponement. It didn't happen, and it has led to where we have decided that the only way to have this happen on the 15th is to give those who believe that they can take it to the 15th, having attended to a number of the concerns that we raised, to do exactly that. We will focus on strengthening the national dialogue, because in its entirety, it's got 13,400 community-based conversations across the countries. They are wide-based conversations. And we wish to be involved in ensuring citizens that they present themselves, encouraging them to present themselves, to ask the hard questions, and of course to provide solutions to our country.
So I apologize for cutting in. Just in the interest of time, very briefly then, I'm getting confused slightly. Have the foundations withdrawn from the preparatory work, but you are still involved in the national dialogue process itself? And if I'm understanding correctly, what will it take for you to go back to the preparatory team? Or is that you're not interested in that anymore?
We have withdrawn from the preparatory task team. It made no sense that this process is stuck because we can't have an agreement around the issue of the first convention. Right? We will re-engage with the process. These foundations do work across communities. Those people must participate in the district dialogues. This must continue to happen. Whether or not the foundations are now the drivers, it must continue to happen. People must ask the right questions about its structures, its accountability, its transparency, its sincerity in listening to their voices. And we will work on a different approach to how we are going to participate in the rest of that, as long as it abides by the principles. The principles that we have outlined have concerned us, and in particular, on the issue of the 15th, our inability to see a path to, as I said, a quality lawful event.
Mr. Biko, thank you very much for your time. Nkosinathi Biko is with the Steve Biko Foundation, and very strong statements from him that if indeed the convention of the 15th and 16th of August is going ahead, it will, and I quote him, it'll be compromised and illegal. Those are very strong statements.